Hello, good day. We're greeting you again today. This time I've invited Mrs. Alexandra and her dog Sunny to join us for the recording. Sunny isn't just any dog. Sunny is mainly an assistance dog who was actually diagnosed with elbow arthritis, and it was for this arthritis that he started taking CBD. And now I'd like to start by letting his owner, Mrs. Alexandra, speak. Thank you so much for coming and tell us something. Tell us something about Sunny, what he's like or what he actually does, since he's an assistance dog.
Sunny is an assistance dog. He is a guide assistance dog for people with autism spectrum disorder. Those are my sons, and both of them have him, and they take turns with him as needed. So he goes with them to school and even to their internships. So now currently he goes to two high schools and to internships, and he didn't go to elementary school. They didn't allow him there, but at the high schools there was absolutely no problem.
MMMM.
And what does he help with? I would say in general terms, because I wouldn't want to specify exactly what, for example, the kinds of problems that sons might have. I haven't found it helpful to share details but in any case, an assistance dog for people with autism spectrum disorder can definitely help. For example, when there's an increased level of tics, which they sometimes have, or panic attacks like when they're taking public transportation, the metro or the bus, there are a lot of people, big crowds, so the dog basically acts as a kind of reassurance for them. They hold on to the dog and focus on the dog, and as a result, they don't really notice their surroundings that much, and they don't have that fear or anxiety that they would have without the dog when they travel without it. Well, and he actually has a kinesiotherapy certificate, so he works as a therapy dog for all kinds of calming, positioning, warming up muscles, because when, for example, they have problems, these children often have stereotypical movements, which are basically tics, but with their whole body, and as a result, they often have joint pain, muscle pain, and body aches. So he works for this as well. He improves communication between people, because basically a person or child who has trouble communicating with others through the dog, the communication works completely differently. For example, when the child started high school, the transition to the school was completely different than it would have been without the dog. Because of course everyone automatically asks about the dog, what the dog can do, what kind of dog it is, and so on. And that's something they can talk about the dog. So basically they started there without any problems, because they started there with you, right?
Well, that's great. And this dog actually helps every day. And sometimes he needs help himself. For example, when some health complications arise, something that commonly happens in a dog's life. For Sunny, it's actually that arthritis, as I mentioned. We actually got in touch with Mrs. Sasha when she started or was considering giving CBD to Sunny. And if I go back to the topic of CBD, how did you actually come across it?
I had actually known about CBD and specifically about you for a really long time because I'm a member of various Facebook groups for mothers and parents of autistic children and kids with ADHD and similar disorders issues. And there I read many times that these moms give their children CBD, specifically from Zelena Zemlje. But that was a few years ago. We're talking about maybe 4 or 5 years since I've known about you. And because I have health problems similar to Sunny myself, I tried CBD that I got from another brand, which my mom actually bought for me, and it worked quite well for me. So then I started focusing on CBD, both for myself and for the dog, thinking about what I could give him as well. And I came across the fact that you actually have products for animals as well. And since I already had references about you, I turned to you.
Well, that definitely made us happy. Sunny is currently taking 10% CBD oil, and you also add hemp oil to his food. Is that right?
I add the hemp oil to his kibble, and I really think it worked perfectly for him. First of all, he has a beautiful coat.
I noticed that when she came in...
The only thing is, it's a shame he's white, so you can't see it as much. But he really does shine, like in the evening when he's under a lamp or under a light. It's really noticeable. Unfortunately, during the day on a white dog, you just can't see it as well, but his coat really is beautiful. And he sometimes had digestive issues, nothing too serious, but he does have a more sensitive stomach. The vet also said he has a sensitive stomach. We did have to deal with a few problems a couple of times, but nothing serious. And I used to have these issues where maybe once a month for 2 or 3 days, he would have some mild stomach problems. He didn't really vomit or anything. He just needed to go outside more often, like for bathroom breaks. And do you want to get down?
He's already bored of being here. Being a star is just tough.
He used to have these occasional problems, and all it took was giving him something, some new treats, like, for example, something he got as a gift. And as soon as we opened it, oh, you got this, so we'll give it to you, something he wasn't used to. So we gave him something unusual. And then for 2 or 3 days, he'd have, or sometimes he'd drink from some pond somewhere, or on vacation, he'd drink before we could stop him in time, because otherwise we don't really let him do that exactly because of this, since we know. But really, even if he just licked it twice, the next day he'd have problems. And ever since I started giving him that hemp oil, he hasn't had any issues. So I think it's definitely because of that.
That his digestion improved.
Definitely, because he used to have those issues before. And since then, the only thing we changed in his diet is that I started adding the hemp oil, and he hasn't had that problem. And so I really think it's definitely because of that.
Awesome. And if we go back to the CBD, before we started recording, you were telling me how it was for him before. And did you notice any changes when you started giving him the CBD? You mentioned he had arthritis, and sometimes he probably had episodes where it hurt.
Well, we actually figured it out after some time, and we think actually even the vet said that he might have been having some problems for about a year already, but it wasn't that noticeable, because you could just tell he was tired, that he would always lie down. When we met up with other dogs, we used to joke that he was like a senior, because the other dogs would run around and he would only run for a little while and then lie down. When we were standing around and chatting, he would immediately lie down, taking advantage of the opportunity. But also, since he's trained as an assistance dog, he's supposed to stay calm. We didn't know. We just thought, well, he's just calm.
I see.
He played for a bit, and now he's just resting. Or maybe he's tired from school, because after all, it's exhausting for him. It's something completely...
Well, school is exhausting even for people.
It's more demanding for him, exactly, even just traveling by public transport. He really does watch over his owner. You can really see it in him. When we go for a walk around our house, for example, he behaves completely differently than he does when we go to the metro. He already knows that he's going to the metro and that he has to be alert, and you can see that he's on guard. He watches out for cars, for trams, for crosswalks, making sure to stop. At every crosswalk, he actually stops and won't let the person step into the street without first looking around and making sure it's safe. Sometimes when I'm walking with him alone and have him on the leash, I forget. And on a street near our place where there's usually no traffic, I just step out and he actually stops me. He just stands there on the sidewalk and won't move until I tell him to come. And then he'll go, but only once he knows I've looked around. So for them, it's really incredibly demanding. So we thought maybe he was just tired and needed to rest. But then over the course of a month, he gradually started to limp. Like, for example, the boys said in the morning that he was limping, that it seemed to them he was limping, but in the afternoon he wasn't limping anymore. I said, you probably imagined it. The next day he was completely fine. The next day I thought he was limping again. The boy said he wasn't limping that morning, so it was confusing. We just didn't know. And then he actually came home from school and he really was limping. It was really very noticeable. He lay down in the garden for a while, and when I told him to get up so we could go home from the garden, he got up and couldn't even walk. So we made an appointment for him at the orthopedics department at the vet center, and there they did x-rays and discovered the arthritis. But it was more of a gradual onset. So the doctor took an x-ray, discovered arthritis, and said it wasn't really that bad. Of course, it was a shock for us just knowing that something was wrong. But since we have experience with this in people, as we've already said, you can live a normal life with it. You just need to take some precautions.
Exactly.
So we try to eliminate stairs, for example, so he doesn't have to go up and down, and wherever it's possible to go around, we just avoid the stairs. He started regularly going to extensive rehabilitation sessions, including beneficial hydrotherapy, and received essential injections once a month. Additionally, we also commenced him on specialized joint supplements and our high-quality CBD product. And now he's been treated to the point where I feel like he's completely fine. So now what we've kept him on is the joint supplement and CBD, And we agreed with the vet that he'll go for rehabilitation once a month, just as maintenance through the spring and summer, since it should be better in the warmer weather, definitely in the warmer weather. And we try to keep him maintained so that he doesn't get unnecessarily overexerted. So when we see that he's more tired, we take him for a walk, but a shorter one. When we see that he's totally fine, then he goes to the forest for a longer one.
So do you also feel like he's perked up a bit?
Definitely, I really think that after the CBD, he's in a better mood.
Yeah.
Like in the morning, he jumps up, grabs his plush toy, and comes to greet us. And lately, before we actually discovered this, he didn't do that anymore. It really seems to us that he's cheerful and in a good mood. I don't know if it's because of that, but he's not taking anything else that would affect his mood. I think he's doing better. He's more balanced, calmer, more content, and in a better mood.
Perfect. Great. And Sanicek is actually from the organization Help Us, as you mentioned. Could you briefly tell us something about that organization? Because a lot of people are interested in assistance dogs. Everyone tends to look at them.
Helps is an organization that trains assistance dogs, signal dogs, and guide dogs. And signal dogs, those are for diabetics.
Yes.
And for people with, for example, seizure disorders, where the dog can actually sense in advance that the person
is about to have a seizure,
will have some kind of seizure, and the dog alerts the person in the way it has been trained to do so. And the person can, for example, just sit down or simply say,
call for help.
Or sometimes even the dog itself is able to call for help because these people might have some kind of switches at home that the dog is trained to use. So when it sees that the person has fainted, it can summon help using the switch or bring them their phone. If the person is able to call for help themselves, then the dog is trained for that.
I understand.
So those are signal dogs. Assistance dogs, for example, are for people with autism spectrum disorders or for a lot of different conditions. Nowadays, dogs can basically be trained for almost anything, really. But it's amazing how much they can help. It really is incredible. For example, I don't understand how he's trained to stop at the end of the sidewalk when we reach a crosswalk, but he does it even in a city where we've never been before. I understand. I just don't get how he really knows that it's the end of the sidewalk, that a crosswalk is coming up, and that he needs to stop there. I have no idea. He must be thinking all the time, just constantly figuring things out. They're always working. And the organization, I think, trains about 10 to 15 dogs every year. They add that now with the pandemic, it was less. So I don't know the exact number. I don't want to mislead anyone here, but it's roughly around that amount. They're mostly golden retrievers because they're skilled, they're smart, and they're able to switch owners. They don't get too attached. So it's not so hard for them to transition from the trainers at the organization to their new owner. They adapt quickly. What else? I think that's more than enough, honestly. First, you talked about the organization, and second, about Sani here. So I think Sani deserves a big compliment for what he does, because in my opinion, it's truly invaluable work. Sani was actually kind of a part of the project. I see. Television-wise, the organization Helps actually had a television project where he was one of the few at the time who was taken in as a puppy just 2 months old, and they would take him to the television studio and present the entire training process there, which lasts about 6 to 8 months old. I see. So they actually introduced him from A to Z, showing how it works, everything he learns, that he has a basic set of skills like taking off clothes, a hat, gloves, pulling off a sweatshirt, and he's able to take off shoes and slippers. Of course, the clothing has to be adapted for that, like it needs to have a zipper. Yes. It needs to have a drawstring, no unbuttoning buttons, so that the dog can actually do it right. So it can help with that. It opens a drawer, closes a drawer, opens the fridge, takes something out. That's the basic set of skills that all these dogs know. And then when the training starts with the future owner, the dog learns additional things that the owner will specifically need. So, for example, calling for help, or warming the person up if they have a seizure and maybe faint or fall down. So the dog lies next to Timon, keeps them warm until help arrives. So it really depends on what the owner specifically needs. Great. All right, Mrs. Seshulina, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. And especially thanks to Sunny, who made the trip here to see us. We'll be very happy if our products continue to improve his quality of life, because he definitely deserves it. She's an amazing dog. Thank you. Thank you.